All right, for our final chapter, get to look at the cultural geography of the future. So jumping right in with region here, especially want to consider the uneven development of geography, uneven geography of development, and how most cultural geographers expect that regional diversity will persist. And the core periphery concept that we've seen throughout the course is just as relevant now as it's ever been, especially where development is concerned. Also, how global interdependence is not evened out differences between the haves and the have-nots. And in many ways, it's increased them. And unfortunately, from a lot of people's perspectives, there is now a transnational class of the super rich, 0.25% of the world's population that owns as much wealth as the other 99.75% plus, most of them living in the first world core. And we can ask ourselves, is the global income gap widening? And not all observers agree. The incomes of the richest nations are increasing at a greater rate than those of the poorest. And it does look as if the rich are becoming richer faster while the poor remain poor. But the many poorer countries contain only 10% of the world's population. And with those that are developing very rapidly, contain more than 40%. And in the meantime, income gaps within nation states are growing rapidly. And this is a very important point. Continuously in the states, hugely widening income gaps, more and more social stratification. China as well, even down in Bolivia, this is the case. Senegal, Africa is a great example as well. Here we have a picture of how globalization doesn't always bring life to sustaining places. The abandoned industrial site and communities that houses workers, referring to the slow world instead of everything speeding up. This picture from Miami, Florida. Mobility. It's especially important to look at mobility within the lens of the digital age here. That we have, how the internet has clearly and profoundly altered the speed and character of cultural interaction. The spread of more democratic forms of governance has accompanied more rapid movement, information over the internet. This was key in the Arab Spring, 2014. Beyond social media, mobile devices played roles in organizing social movements, Occupy Wall Street as well. Arab Spring again for this, and the internet has diffused almost every land into every land, but the barriers to access include inadequate infrastructure, poverty, and sometimes tyrannical governments. Nonetheless, the current trends suggest a near universally connected world in the future. Here's a look at diffusion on the internet, along with some of the earliest cities to connect in the dots. The origin in 1969 within the States and spreading out from there. In terms of mobilities, new automobilities. In 2010, China took the US to become the largest automobile market in the world in terms of both sales and production. So this is a huge shift in the automobile market and in global pollution standards as well. India has emerged as the region's third largest exporter of passenger cars, behind only Japan and South Korea. So this telling us how much of China's production is for domestic use. American auto manufacturers have scrambled to gain a foothold in these emerging markets, and it's presenting quite the complications. Here you see a fairly outdated picture, probably at least 10 to 15 years ago, from traffic congestion in Shanghai. You can see still a large amount of people on bikes. Currently in Shanghai, this almost all be replaced by electric or gasoline run scooters, and you'd see a lot more cars than this, a lot more newer models as well. But it does give you a sense of the hustle and bustle of street life. Another picture here, most likely from China, of the global tourism, how it exemplifies the mobility of today's age. We can ask ourselves, what do such encounters suggest about the effects of global tourism on local cultures? a whole range of pros and cons to that. Globalization theme, we can begin to ask, what will globalization bring in the future? It would seem to erase the cultural difference, but has also been accompanied by a reassertion of religious, national, and ethnic identities. And importantly, the future effects of globalization will likely not be predominantly homogenizing. It's often purportedly so, and certainly has been the case in some areas, but there do seem to be lots of examples, even within the Bay Area, of globalization being bucked by local cultural emergences of uniqueness and place-based idiosyncrasies. Globalization and its discontents, to continue on that theme, many people, the future under globalization does not look bright. Ultra-nationalist reactions include calls for protections of national industries against global competition and limits to immigration and migrant rights. So you're seeing this play out in Northern Europe here in 2017, and especially in the US with the conservative movement. On the political left are critics who see globalization as leading to increased economic inequalities across all geographic scales and increased empowerment of transnational corporations. It's certainly been the case through neoliberalization, and the Occupy movement has pointed that out very well. Similarly, of the 90s, the Zapatista movement was countering this globalization, especially through the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. So we have these blending sounds on a global scale. If we think about music historically, synthesis, hybridization, these all have deep roots. You can think about African melodies and rhythms coming over and combining with Celtic music in the Appalachian region, eastern US. It's actually fairly difficult to find a truly authentic or pure, locally bound music genre that has not been influenced by extra local musical forms. So especially with modern technological innovations, from the invention of gramophone through the release of online file sharing, these practices and processes have accelerated, intensified, and added to musical hybridization. When I was down in Bolivia, a wonderful drummer there was collaborating with a bassist from New York City. They were sharing music back and forth digitally and then meeting up in person every year. So it's a great example of, some of the more benign or interesting cultural, perhaps even culturally beneficial aspects that can come from some of this globalization. Through the theme of nature culture, we can look at this phrase, no analog future. Global fossil fuel consumption is rising dramatically in response to demands of China and India's rapidly expanding economies, and continuously so here in North America, our huge petroleum diet. How atmospheric carbon dioxide level is higher today than it's ever been in 2 million years. This leads physical geographers, lots of scientists around the world, to use this term, no analog future, to describe how there are no scenarios in the ecosystem's past precedent to guide our understanding of what the future, how it might be transformed by all this rapid industrialization and continued fossil fuel addiction. So we can wonder, are there sustainable futures? A lot of critics, observers, scientists feel that this term sustainable development is actually an oxymoron. Critics of the mainstream model point out that it does not take into account larger scale historical and structural causes of poverty, such as the lasting effects of European colonialism, present day neo-imperialism, neo-colonialism still continuing through multinational corporations, and the focus on the link between poverty and ecological degradation downplays the environmental impact from high levels of consumption in affluent countries. This is a very significant cause, consumption. Consumption is a huge cause of our environmental problems. So here we have mountaintop mining in West Virginia, decimation of the landscape, the tailings or the debris left behind from the mountaintops or dumped into the adjacent river valleys, obliterating fish habitat, other wildlife habitat, stream flow. Coal, of course, from this mountaintop mining is used to power energy production facilities. So alternative approaches to sustainable development really stem from below rather than the top-down global program. So grassroots options and switching our main energy sources from fossil fuels to renewable sources. There's a lot of these movements going on in the Bay Area, and it's really exciting to live in an area where there's a lot of citizen engagement, citizen activism, and participation in local politics. So great forms of this from below model. On the cultural landscape theme, you can begin to wonder about globalized landscapes, what those are in the past, what they can be in the future, and especially looking at urban landscapes today and how they can serve as an index to the level and type of engagement with the globalized process. So looking around the San Francisco Bay Area, rapidly transforming skylines, and just in the East Bay, continued tracts of grasslands continuing to be paved over for more tract homes. But these homogenizing processes are neither omnipresent, meaning everywhere, present everywhere, nor omnipotent, meaning all powerful. We have visible differences among cities that seem likely to persist. People all over the world value their cultural landscapes. It's important to point out, there are still places being protected even within a highly developed state such as California, both in wildlands and urban centers being restored and maintained. The California Sierra Nevada foothills are a great example of small towns maintaining more of a rustic rural image instead of completely being paved over by up and coming tract homes and everywhere in their town borders. Similar example to that here is Copenhagen's Nahavn district. This was a key port for over 300 years in Denmark, and this city slapped on fresh coats of bright paint and hauled in antique sailing ships, create one of the most recognizable historic ports in the world. And we can ask ourselves, do you know of other historic waterfronts that have been similarly restored to create iconic urban landscapes? And can't really speak of restoring or preserving urban landscapes without talking about sea level rise. Very significant issue, especially for us on coastal, living in coastal cities, coastal affected cities such as the Bay, up and down the West Coast, East Coast. 60% of human populations around the world live within about a mile of the coast. So this is going to be a very pressing problem for humanity moving forward. Most critical impact of climate change is sea level rise. Sea level rise is faster than in past centuries. It's accelerating. It has a direct effect on coastal flooding. Also indirect effects such as power outages, damaged sewer and water systems. This can lead to diseases and backup of effluent and sewer systems, creating public health problems. There's a wide range of responses to sea level rise, though, how they might drastically alter coastal urban landscapes is yet to be seen. The most dramatic will be population migration inland, so people having to leave their coast to get farther inland and higher in elevation. This is already happening in various places in Florida and China, and we'll begin to see more examples of this. In fact, in the Southwest Pacific, thousands of people having to leave their islands to head to mainland New Zealand or Australia to seek higher ground, safer environments. So please post your questions or comments below, and we'll continue this discussion there. Thanks.